Hi there, Fiddler Dan here, and a question I often get with a lot of people is how much is my violin worth? So I thought today I'd just go through a range of violins and you can get an idea of the process that I use and arrive at an approximate value for your violin if you're so inclined. And so value of violins, I might mean grandma's violin that you found in the cupboard in a state of disrepair, or you've got a student violin that someone's no longer using, or you want to upgrade it, so you want to get an idea of its value. So that's what I want to talk about today. So I'm going to go through a range of violins from cheap up to more expensive and just show you the process that I use. So this first one here is something that looks like a violin, sounds like a violin to a point, but it turns out that this is a plywood violin and worth not more than $100 when new, and so considerably less when it's second hand. One of the things that I use when I'm valuing a violin is I look at the price that it was when it was new, and then I halve that, and then I start to look at the cost that it takes to get it back up to working condition. And so that might mean replacing the strings, replacing the bridge if it's warped. What's the condition of the case like? What's the condition of the bow like? And pretty soon you arrive at a figure, and for these violins that figure is often more than the violin itself is worth. And so the value of that violin is there's not much value to that violin at all. So I'll have a link where I show you some of these violins and the value in depth. So please have a look at that. That'll be up in the corner of the screen in a minute. If, however, you've got what is quite a reasonable student violin, then my process is again to try and determine its value when it's for sale new, and then work from there. So how do I determine the value of a violin? Firstly, looking at the bridge might be useful. There's often a brand name on there, but it's the brand name of the bridge maker, so it's not actually the brand of the violin. To find out the brand of the violin, you need to go inside and look through this F-hole here, and there we go. So I can see that this violin here is a Righetti, and if I look down here I can see that it's the RV2 model. So Google's my friend. I'll just go and look on Google and see what that retails for, and that'll give me an idea of the price. Then I look at the condition of the bridge, the strings. For a second-hand instrument, often you need to check the pegs, check that they are not sticking and that they work okay, that the pegs are not too far in on the peg box, and check that your fine adjusters here are all working. And then you want to go and look for any cracks that you might see, some open seams here. Particularly look around the neck joint here to see if there's any movement there. Cracks will usually appear on the front of the body here, so you want to have a look at those. And then again looking at the bow and the case and the condition that they're in. So that's a Righetti. It's worth $300-400 new, so somewhere around half of that is reasonable value. Let's look now at something a little more unusual. This is an older instrument, and so we need first to determine its origin, and then the quality with which it was put together to arrive at an approximate value, and then finally how it sounds. So where is this instrument made? It's clearly an older instrument. The varnish tells me that it's made somewhere in Europe, if not Eastern Europe. Quite nice timbers here are used, so it's a reasonably nice instrument. Let's have a look at the label. Labels are a guide. There's a lot of forgery of labels, particularly on older instruments, so you have to be careful of that. So this one is a Stradivarius. They've at least been honest enough here to say copy of a Stradivarius. That means it copies the Stradivarius shape, and you can see here made in Czechoslovakia. And there's a particular spelling there, and if you look up that spelling you can arrive at a 20 or 30 year period in which the instrument was made. So a Czechoslovakian instrument, there's no name of a maker there, so this suggests that it was a factory instrument or a small workshop, but not something that a maker put their name to. So that's a minus in its value. My next step is to take a look inside. I can't really show you that on a camera here, but I would be peeking in through here and just looking at the construction. Here's one I prepared earlier, another old instrument. And you can see here, these are what's called corner blocks here. And the presence of those generally indicates that it's a better instrument. A lot of the cheaper factory instruments don't have corner blocks in here because it saves a bit of time, and it's therefore likely to be a cheaper instrument. Some of them can sound good, but often they don't sound so good. I can also have a look at the linings here. Here and here, and how well they're made and shaped, and that gives another indication of value as well. So this is one that I've fixed up. I had the top off and I did some repairs. The final guide is how does it sound. So it's a nice instrument. It sounds nice. I've put a value on that one of just under $1,000 at $750. Some of that's its heritage, some of that's its sound, and of course there's the cost there in setting everything up. So how do I arrive at these instruments? Well, people sometimes bring them to me, or I go out and find them. The condition that they're in might sometimes look something like this. And here, when I'm trying to determine its value in this condition, I'm looking for things like the cracks. You can see here some quite significant cracks here. These ones are substantial enough that the top would have to come off this. Then I'm looking for other evidence. So we can see here we've had a neck break here. Now a neck break is quite repairable, but it does reduce the value of an instrument significantly, particularly when the repair is a screw. And then I'm looking at the condition of the peg box. Particularly on older instruments here, you'll often see cracks running with the grain around where the pegs are. Now that's repairable, but it does detract from the value of the instrument. So this instrument here, by the time those cracks have been repaired, and this has been repaired, we've put a fingerboard on it, some strings, tailpiece, chin rest. I found a case and a bow for it. The cost to do all of that is about the cost that you'd sell it for. So the intrinsic value of this violin is almost zero. I like to keep these in my shop because, well, there's something I can do when I've got downtime, which is not very often, but also they're a chance to harvest parts if I need to, because when you're fixing an older instrument, having older timber available is trickier to get in Australia. So they have a utility for me there. Here's another older instrument. You can see here in quite good condition. The grain lines on the top timber there are quite fine. There's some lovely flame on the back. And what I'm looking for here are how the F-holes are carved here. I'm looking in particular here at the corners here in the purfling, and I look closely at the scroll here and the carving there. These are all areas of pride for a maker, and the attention to detail there gives you an idea of the attention to detail of the whole instrument in addition to the basic construction details. And so this one is sold by a reputable shop, or was sold, and that tells me that that's a nice instrument. How does it sound? I'm not sure if this is in tune. Okay, that needs tuning, but I can tell you that's a nice instrument, and I value that instrument up in the thousands. So that's a nice one. So look, I hope that's giving you an idea of the value of violins from my perspective, and that you can look and find out an approximate value of your instrument. Bear in mind, there's a valuation, how much the instrument is intrinsically worth, but then there's how much can you sell it for, and that's probably a separate question, because the selling of an instrument, if it's a student one, you can probably sell that for around half the price of what it was new, if everything's working. But if it's a more expensive violin, people will be quite reluctant to buy that as a personal sale, because they don't understand necessarily the authenticity of the instrument and the authenticity of you as a seller as well. So you may not be able to get anything close to what its actual value is if you try to sell that privately. If you try to sell it through a shop, of course they've got their holding costs and so on. So see how you go. Put some comments in if you like, whatever. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.